Welcome to Talento Latinos from Latinos in Michigan TV. I'm your host, Liliana Ospina Herstred. And today, Frank Solis is joining me to talk about his father, Martin Solis, and Los Primos, and the progress in the historic Tejano Music Market project for his father on the 23rd and Bagley in Southwest Detroit. Fran, welcome to Talento Latinos, and tell me about the musical legacy of your father.
Okay, he was born in San Antonio in 1929. He was the first of 12 children. They were, I could say they were born, I was born in San Antonio. My father at the time, my grandfather, he was a migrant worker. And they migrated here to Detroit like in 1942. He didn't stay long, but they came in 1944. And that's when they permanently stayed here. The Solis family stayed here in 1944, and in between 44 all the way through the late 40s, the 50s, they went back and forth from Oklahoma City to Detroit, back and forth, where he also, my grandfather, his dad picked up a trade as a painter. He was a union painter. So they had gone back and forth at that time, but their permanent resident was in Michigan, in the Detroit, in Southwest Detroit. And from there, that's when he started playing. But he started actually playing guitar for tips in San Antonio with a gentleman named Mr. Johnson. And that's how it started. He said he only knew like 3 chords, and he would play. Mr. Johnson would bring him with him, and they would both perform. And Mr. Johnson would perform for drinks and beer, and he would just get the tips. He'd get a couple of pennies here and there. And that's how he started playing. And then when they got to Detroit, he went to high school. I think it was Northwestern High School for a bit before they moved again to Oklahoma, where he was in the band class and he played guitar. And he took it from there back and forth. And then the story goes on with the music. And then he met some friends and they started playing as a trio with Los Primos. This was in the about 1952, 53. The gentleman's name was Joe Martinez and Rodolfo Martinez. And we've got pictures of them, of their early photographs of them together in Detroit. So he started playing with them. And then the story is that prior to him going with Rudy and Joe, they were looking for a singer and a guitar player. And these guys were about maybe 7, 8 years older than my dad. And Joe had went and found my dad. He was playing with somebody, an accordion player named El Lobo. His name was Manuel Rivera, El Lobo. And Joe got my dad to join his trio. And that's where it really kind of took off with him from the singing, because Joe was a professional. And Joe taught him how to sing, how to hold his notes, to breathe properly, to sing, and also on the guitar, because Joe also played the bajo sexto and also regular guitar, a regular 6-string. And that's how my dad started out.
And tell me about Los Primos, because we're talking about bolero, right? That's the 50s, that's like the prime time of boleros, right?
Yeah, he did rancheros, boleros, but his style mostly that he liked to sing with the band. I mean, they would do polkas and all the rest, but he liked to sing boleros and play boleros. That was part of his mystique about when he played with his band.
So it was like a mix, right?
Yeah, there were a variety of Tejano, Tex-Mex music, polkas, rancheras, and then boleros.
I'm from South America, so I don't know. Explain to me what's Tejano music, because I know boleros and I know rancheras, but Tejano, that's...
The Tejano music comes from the Valley in Texas, and Narciso Martinez, he was actually the founder of that. And what it is, it's the button accordion with the 12-string Mexican guitar called a bajo sexto, and drums. It's 4 on the floor. It's 4 drums. The drums, the bass player, bajo sexto, and accordion. That's Tejano style, and that's the polka music that comes from Eastern Europe. Oh. And the Mexican musicians, they had just changed over the sound. I think the technical were that they changed the reeds and all the buttons, and that was Narciso Martinez, and a lot more, and Tony De La Rosa. And those are the ones that started with what was actually known as the Tejano sound, and then also with Conjunto Bernal in the 60s. But that's what it is the vowel sexto, the accordion, the bass, and the drum.
How was the environment in Detroit at that time when your dad was doing his music? Because, you know...
Yeah, that's a good question, because the environment at the time, if you see some of the interviews that he had done, there were no Mexican bars or no clubs for music like that. And the only place that they played, and that's the same way it was also down in San Antonio and down in the valley, that people would have house parties. And my dad had said how they would just move the furniture out at a house wherever they're at, and then the musicians would play and entertain.
Oh, it was more like the families, like still like that legacy. I see a lot of Hispanic families. They had, for instance, La Primera Comunión, the First Communion, or the quinceañeras, and they had the local Latino band. You know, and that's how people started. Hey, there is this band, Los Primos. You know, they're very good, and
yeah. So that's how he started, and in the very early days, that's how it started. You know, there would be graduations, you know, and at the time the Mexican community would be something small, maybe at the church at St. Anne's in Detroit or Holy Trinity, and then the families would have something to get together with the families at the home. So then they would bring in the bands or whoever they're going to have to entertain, and they would come and do that. And that's what he used to do in the early days.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's no, go ahead. I just get excited because that's fascinating.
And like I say, a lot of that was in the 1950s, you know, and even earlier than that, because like I say, that there was no there were no venues for them to play anywhere, and the musicians, they would play anywhere, you know, because people, and my dad too, he said that they would go out to Hart, Michigan, where they were picking strawberries. And they would travel out there for the migrant workers, and they would entertain them on a weekend out there in the fields, you know, and wherever they had a place for them to set up, that's where they would play. And half the time they didn't charge a lot. They would just take tips, you know, but they were out there working too, because of, you know, that's what they did at that time. And if there was a booking somewhere that they got hooked, or what he would find out at a certain location, that's where they would go.
And as a child, because I see you're very proud of your dad's legacy, and I think that's remarkable. As a child, what's the best memory of you with your dad and the you know, music environment?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that's come up in other interviews about our relationship, and I even say in the documentary that I love him very much, but we also had, anything with a father and a son. You know, there's always, you know, there's something, but sometimes there's just like a rift. And the rift that me and him actually had it took us years to realize it, for me actually to understand. It was because I never seen him. He was always working on the weekends, and I would never see him. And all my friends in the neighborhood, you know, their dads would be taking us to baseball games, you know, going out, and he was always working. So I always felt as a kid, and my other two brothers at times, you know, that he liked doing that more than being with us. So that was kind of the misunderstanding we had through most of our life. There was kind of a touchy situation until he got much older and I got older and wiser, and then realized the love and the passion for the music.
I'm sure for your dad, it was the same. He loved it. He didn't see it as a work, and it's time consuming. But you have now this legacy of your dad that is fascinating.
And that's how it started, you know, is that the whole process of, which we get into later, the process of his induction, that's what started it. When I was talking to my friend in Alice, Juan Cifuentes, and he's the son of the legendary Conjunto Bernal, Juan Cifuentes Sr. And me and him had struck up a friendship, and we were always, you know, we would talk about what it was like, and he would always tell me what it was like when his dad was on the road, and he felt the same way. He'd never see him, even though his father would take him places where they played. For instance, here in Detroit at the Armenian Hall, and I think that was on Verner or Dragoon, the Armenian Hall. I don't know if it's there anymore, but a lot of the dances were held there. And Tony Della Rosa, Canuto Bernal, a lot of them played there at that big hall. And that's where I think one time, me and Juan are still trying to figure out, I think that's when we met. And we were kids. I was like 9 years old, and so was he. So that's how the conversation had started about our fathers. And then it progressed into the Hall of Fame thing, how it started.
Do you play any instruments?
I play guitar and I sing, but I haven't played in over 10 years. And my brother Pete, he's also a musician too, and he plays drums.
Why you haven't seen in 10 years?
well, I haven't played in front of an audience in 10 years.
Oh, okay.
Last time I played was with my brother, and it was over on Telegraph in Taylor at a Harley Davidson benefit for a young lady that had cancer, and they brought a lot of bands in. And my brother's band, we went there and we did, that we performed as one of the bands. That was the last time that I actually played in front of anybody. My older brother, Martin Jr., he mastered the bajo sexto like my dad. And he formed his own conjunto, and he brought my dad back out of retirement. That was in the 90s. Because my dad, he just retired from Airborne, where he worked. And so he had back surgery. He wasn't getting around. So my brother got the bug from him, and then he formed his own conjunto, and he brought my dad in as vocals. And if my dad wanted to play bajo, he would do that. And my brother would sit it out and let him, the old pro, do his thing. And unfortunately, my brother passed away in 1993 of type 1 diabetes. So the family was really devastated. All of us, the loss of him, and then of course with him the loss of his son and my mother. It was a hard thing for our family, to lose him, because it was just the four of us. We have a big family. I've got a lot of loving aunts and my cousins, a lot, but it was just our family. Then we lost him, and he's a very important part of our life. So my dad kind of went into reclusiveness, and he didn't do anything. And he didn't come out again until 1997. And he performed with his friend Henry Zimmerly in San Antonio. And Henry Zimmerly is also a conjunto. He's also a Tejano Roots Hall of Fame member, and he's a very good friend of my dad's. So that's when my dad came back out in 97, that he would start going around. He wasn't performing full-time with the bands anymore, but if he would go to a club or a dance, they would see him there. Of course, he'd go up and sing. And that went on until about 2000, something like that. And then his health just slowly started to decline. And then he was already to the point where he'd had enough. He'd been doing this for 50 years, and he kind of had enough, And my mom was relieved. There's no more going out to the clubs or going somewhere or invited somewhere where, that he would sing or he would play. So he called it a day. It was about 2001.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So with that going on, back to the induction, that's another whole story in its own. I appreciate the coverage, and you doing this can have a lot of editing to do, I imagine, to probably put that into a program. But anyway, I became friends with Juan Cifuentes Jr. He's the father. He's the son of Juan Cifuentes Sr. My dad has a picture of his dad and my dad are together, and also with the great Oscar Hernandez. He was another accordion player for Conjunto Bernal along with Paulino Bernal. And that picture was taken in 1972 at the Luna Pier Ballroom in Luna Pier. And I don't know if you're aware, but that was for the Mexican community, that was a big dance hall. Huge. It's a huge place. And in one of the documentaries, there's a picture of the Luna Pier Ballroom. And that place was just big. And that's where a lot of the bands from Detroit played up north. A lot of them came from Texas. And it was Olivia Galan and her husband, Pablo Garza. They ran that place. And they would bring all the bands in from Texas. Tony De La Rosa, Ruben Vela, Canuto Bernal, Henry Zimmerly, all these top bands from San Antonio would come and play. So we were talking about, like I said, the same thing about our fathers and all this going on. And Juan had suggested to me that would I consider, or do you think would I consider nominating him, that I should submit a form to have him inducted into the Tejano Roots Hall of Fame? And at the time I thought, well, man, I mean, that's really nice of you to, to say that. And Juan, at the time, he worked for Tejano Roots. He was a board member and he retired. So he told me, would I be interested? And I told him, I said, that's really great coming from you, because Juan's also a musician and a singer. And I said, well, that's really great coming from you that you would even consider or even think that he was honored, that the honor for him to even try to be inducted into that group at the Hall of Fame in Texas, because that's the Hall of Fame that is recognized in the state of Texas. It's been approved by the governor. He signed the papers. That's the official site. So I said, he a lot of his work was in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, but he never recorded. He never had any recordings, because in 65, when my dad started working for Airborne, he had a choice to make for our family. Either continue playing music and not a very high wage of a living struggle, or work at Airborne Air Freight, which at first was called Pacific Air Freight. And it was the union trucking company that turned into that conglomerate Airborne. And it was a union job, Teamsters Local 299. He was very proud of that. So he had to make the decision of, do I continue playing music, what I love to do, or do I go out and get, a high paying job and support my family and have things that I want, and basically live the American dream, of working hard, from working in the fields and other jobs. Do I do this? And he chose that he was going to stay, he was going to work for Airborne. He stayed there 33 years. So what he would do is that he would play on the weekends when he had it off. And during the week, he would work at Airborne all week, and then he'd have Saturday, Sunday off, and he'd get home from work, and then he was off playing on the weekends. That's why we never seen him. And that's all he did. And I mean, Lillian, there were times that he would get home at 2 or 3 in the morning, and Airborne would call. And we would wake him up that they wanted to come in to work overtime to meet a plane at the airport for delivery. And he'd get up and go. And then he'd come back home later on in the afternoon. He'd lay down, and here he had something booked, and off he would go again. And lugging the instruments, and off he'd go. And he did that for so many years. I was very proud of him.
What's the story about the lost recordings? Because you guys found some lost recordings, right? From your dad.
Yeah. When I talked to Cifuentes about that one, he said, he goes, they have a category which is called the Pioneer Award, that they recognize these musicians for their work and their contribution to Tejano music. And he said, even though your dad didn't make any recordings, he was one of the first in the Detroit area, in Southwest Detroit, to start playing Tex-Mex conjunto music. So that would qualify him in their categories, and that it's been over 15 years and how long he'd been in the business of doing that. So I only had I had 3 recordings. One that I made when he was 10 years old, and it was made on an old Kmart recorder, on a Kmart tape. And I just kept it for years. And then when I got older and moved out, all my stuff, my mom kept it. So I had that tape. So I remember I had that. So I took it to a record studio and I tried to get it fixed. And we got just enough of a couple of songs out of it. And then there was a song that he had done in the recording studio with my brother. So I used those 3 songs, all the pictures that I had, and I did what was required, that we write the bio on his story, pictures, recordings, and their board of directors that sit there and they review all of the applications that come in, and they make their selection. And he made it in on the first ballot that he got in. And what got him in was because of the notoriety of his playing days here in Detroit with the Conjunto Sound, brought from Texas to Detroit. And he was inducted in the class of 2017. And
3 years ago.
Yeah, and at the time already, I mean, I kind of known already he was 88 and he was really declining, but he was very honored and he was very happy about, the induction, and he was just overwhelmed. Kidding around, he says, I wish this would have happened when I could walk and I could move around, and I could go out and do things. So a lot of the interviews after he had won with NPR radio, the newspapers, they always had to come to the home, to our house for him. And then we had to get him ready and stuff because of his condition, that he couldn't sit up too long, he couldn't walk and pain a lot. So he enjoyed it. He enjoyed it very much.
It's fascinating because, although he wasn't younger, he was able to see that before he passed. That's something, sometimes some people don't get that chance, I think in a way he was blessed that he was able to see that his music made an impact.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, is that at the end, that he'd been in a nursing home, and there was no way that we were going to keep him in a nursing home. I wasn't, but my mom at the time, and they'd been married 66 years, the two of them, and it got to a point where she couldn't take care of him no more because she's 90, she's as old as he. She's 90, but she gets along, but she just couldn't take care of him more. It was too much. He needed a full-time staff of people. And fortunately, my wife, she has a healthcare business that we have. So we brought in our people to help take care of him. Then also he was a veteran in the 50s in the service in Korea. So he received all the benefits from the VA, which was phenomenal what they did. They gave him everything. So he had a big staff of people here at the house. And in my office now, this was his bedroom because we moved into my house. And this was his room. And this is where I've made his office now, is in here with me. And
he was in Korea. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, he was in the Korean, in that conflict, they called it.
The story of your dad is absolutely amazing.
And then what a lot of people don't understand either, with the bad rap that we get as Hispanics, all of us, is that our fathers and our grandparents, they all served in these wars, that in these American conflicts for freedom, and they were always, and they were there all the time too, just along with everybody else. So he was very proud of that. So like I say, the VA took care of him very well, and he already knew that he was inducted in, so he used to play around with the nurses in here, and he kind of kid around with him from his bed and tell him, "You know who I am now, don't you?" And then he liked that. He'd play around with them. And
so what will be the message that you will give the people? Because I didn't know anything about your dad. And I think it's a fascinating story made here in Michigan.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And then too, and then too, I would say with my determination of everything that I've done, when this first happened, when he first got inducted, I tried all the local medias and nobody would cover the story, This wouldn't cover it. The local papers did here in Taylor, Allen Park, and in the Downriver area. They covered it. And then also the NPR radio station, they covered the story. But when it came to like Channel 4, Channel 7, and 2, that they just didn't cover it. I guess it wasn't a worthy story. So I kept going on, and I wouldn't quit. So after he won, too, we had a celebration at the Thunderbolt Lands in the banquet room. We had a band playing there, and it was a real nice celebration for his induction, because he couldn't go to Texas with us because of the trip. So after he won, we had scheduled, we put together a big event, for him. And he was honored by his hometown, the city of Melvindale. They made a proclamation, Martin Solis Day. So that was really nice. Our state representative, Cara Clemente, she also gave him a proclamation from her. And then we also had Alana Vargo from Wayne County Commissioner. She gave him one. So he got all of that too from the state officials. And then his last one he got was from in November from the state of Michigan, from I think it was the 97th legislature, and also from the governor. They gave him a state of Michigan proclamation. And then he also, after his passing, he got the Heritage Award from the Julian Zamora Institute at the Michigan State University. He received that award also. Yeah, so I mean, just from a phone call thinking and submitting something where it ended up. So then as we go to the story, so after all that had happened, that he had been inducted and with the recognition, the Martin Solis Day, I was upstairs cleaning his room. The upstairs attic where my mom and dad used to have their bedroom, but I was cleaning stuff up. My mom was saying, it's time we get some of this stuff. And my dad's going, yeah, you should get some of that stuff. I got a lot of stuff up there. So I started going through all their stuff and I come across this bag. It is wrapped in plastic with duct tape on it. And it's got that airborne tape on it, I think, but it was just wrapped. So I was going to throw it. I said, well, it's just more garbage because you like to collect stuff, and I said, well, I'm just going to throw it in the barrel. Something told me, I was getting ready to throw it, and I said, let me open this thing up. And I opened it up, and there were 7 reel-to-reels. And one of them said on it, Los Primos, the band, 1958, 1965. And then there were other arrangements from the 1970s and the 60s. And there was a lot of stuff on there. And I said, oh my God. And I said, but at the time I really didn't think. I said, well, I'll check them out. I got to find somebody that has a reel-to-reel. And I'll check them out and we'll pass them out to our family. I didn't think anything of it. So I found the tapes and I took them to my friend Ed Gillis, and he's the brother of Jack White. Jack White and the White Stripes. Jack's a Grammy Award winner. He's known all over the world.
Yeah, Jack White.
Yeah. So Jack had heard Mexican music before, and he liked it. He did a biography with Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin and the Edge of YouTube, and he had talked about his days in Michigan and Detroit, Southwest, about the Mexican music. So he knew what that was all about.
So he heard about Tejano music, Jack White.
Yeah.
And what happened?
So then me and Ed took I took the tapes over to Ed's house, and Ed has a little studio, so we listened and we were amazed that we heard it. I couldn't believe that I finally heard, because I'd heard so many stories of the band and him through our family. And to hear it come alive and to hear his cousin Willie on the sax, they were very, very close. They're like, brother, it was amazing to hear it, in tears. So anyway, Lord, on time. So Ed says, I'm gonna turn this over, if you don't mind, I'm gonna turn it over to the executives at his brother's company in Nashville. Well, Jack heard him, and he said he wanted to preserve those tapes, and it's an amazing story. So he asked permission with the family. We went through what we had to do, and then he wanted to produce the album. He had his brother produce it, and they made an album. But it took a lot of work to clean up those tapes, and the sound on it is phenomenal on the album. The job that they did. And
when was the album released, or is gonna be released?
It was released on July the 10th of this year. Yeah. And that's when finally the local media, Channel 2 News, picked up on it. And then if you've seen, I might have sent you the clip when they did the clip on Fox News.
All the work you've done to preserve that legacy of your dad. And finally, when a big star, took it, the media pay attention.
And then also, after all this, the album release was good. A lot of, I've already done interviews in Texas at SCP Radio. I do plan on having a first annual Conjunto Festival here at the Mexican Town Development Corporation.
Yes. When?
With Raymond Lozano.
I appreciate Raymond a lot.
Yeah. So then the other project, so after all this is going on, then I've been working also with the Michigan Music Hall of Fame. And the director there, his name is Kevin Hill. So he gets with me, and he was fascinated with the stories, my dad being the first inducted, the Tejano roots. So he wanted to know, would I be interested in it? Could they have permission that we submit to the state of Michigan, the Historical Society, to put a historical marker on site? And we were thinking of Bagley to have that put up, and it'll have the story of my dad, all the other musicians that played through that area and that era. So we were looking.
You told me about that. That's going to happen in a few months, or already happened?
Well, this is going on right now. We're in the works right now of putting everything together. And so when we said we were looking for a site, that we got to I got to know a very fine gentleman, Jesse Gonzalez. And Jesse, yeah, he just got on for you guys. Fantastic guy. And he's the one that mentioned Ray Lozano to me. So I had contacted Ray, and I brought Jesse with me to the meeting that we had, myself and with the director of the Hall of Fame. And we had told them that we were looking for sites where we wanted to put the marker. And it stands about 6'5". It's big, you know, and it's going to be all in brass. Well, I think you've seen what they look like, those historical markers.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray, they wanted us to pick their site, which we already, and I was thinking on Bagley over right there by Zocalo's.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because that's where they actually played at too. So we picked that site. So that's going to be the site. It's going to be there. And then we started contacts, you know, because the Ford Motor Company, I used to work for Ford too, throwing a plug in for Ford, but Ford Motor Company purchasing the train station, they got a lot of influence down there now, and they've really done a lot of work down in that area and with the train station. So we are trying, we got with, through Jesse actually, with the Hispanic, Ford Hispanic Network. We're looking at them for funding also. And then also from the record company, our record company at Third Man, we're looking for funding from them also. And the Hall of Fame website, if your listeners, if they go to Michigan Music Hall of Fame and look it up, you'll see the article and the writings about the historical marker project. We're not asking for money all the time, but it is there. If you'd like to donate, you can donate to that cause.
So basically, people that want to help you with some donations, so this can become a reality, they can go here in Michigan Michigan Music Hall of Fame and donate.
Yep. And it also has the story of what we're doing, and it's a tax write-off. All, you know, the taxes that they'll send you back your receipt, whatever. And so we're looking at that. And because of the COVID thing, which, you know, we've had a lot of problem with our fundraising right now. You know, so we're waiting for these vaccines to come out, and I can start hitting the floor and on the ground out here, and I can start going around, because I've had a few of the posters already put in a few restaurants. The word is getting out, but not too much yet. So we haven't really, you know, because of the COVID, we can't do too much right now, but things are coming, they're looking up, God willing. So we're really going to start on that. And we're pretty confident right now with the Ford Hispanic group and also Jack White. And I just got a letter yesterday from Cara Clemente, our state representative, where she's endorsing our project. And she has sent her letter to the Michigan Historical Society. And they also, with her, she also sent me some infos on some grants probably to cover this. And the whole plan is, once we get this done, hopefully by the end of summer, and that we're going to have the first annual, this Conjunto Festival. And we're going to have a ribbon ceremony cutting with the families there at the site at 23rd and Bagley. And I've also been in contact with Budweiser already about an exclusive sponsor for this, if we're going to do this. And also I have to get with Ray again, because Ray's been busy, but we're going to try to put something very, very nice down there with the Tejano music and versions also of other styles of Latin music down there. And I do plan on bringing a few big bands in from Texas. So it's going to be exciting for us, you know, and for the community and for the culture for all of us.
Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like our page, Latinos in Michigan TV, on Facebook. See you next time.